I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. It's interesting, and for those of you who are maybe here for the first time and brand new, or maybe those of you who've been at this for a total of 9 months and think you should have it figured out by now, when was the last time anyone taught you? There's seats up, so don't go straight to the back. There's seats. If you all in the back want to come forward, that way people don't end up in the back facing backwards. So, thanks. Appreciate it. When was the last time anybody taught you how to brush your teeth? Anyone had a lesson recently? How to brush your teeth? Did you take a 6-week course on it a year ago? Did you pay someone $500 to certify you to brush your teeth? Did you all brush your teeth today? Amazing. Right? Somehow you managed to do it. Buddhist practice is no different than brushing your teeth. This is for those who are brand new, or those of you who have been at this for a month, or 9 months, or 3 years. It's not complicated. Buddhism is not some intellectual thing that you figure out. It's not something that you need to learn more of. It's not. Now that will challenge so many of you because very often people think they have to learn about Buddhism. As if you read 17 books on it and go to 12 different Buddhist temples and end up, there's plenty of seats, so if you want to come take a seat, feel free. And everybody just... the old temple where I started at, when we walked in, or when we entered the space, you know where we sat? In the front. And then the next person, the first person would sit there, next person would sit there, the next person would sit there, and it would just go like that. If we did that here, you would all explode. You wouldn't have your favorite seat, you wouldn't get your seat by a window in the sun, you wouldn't get to sit by your friend, you wouldn't be on the left side or the right side, It's just a seat. We talk about non-attachment in Buddhist practice. You're also attached to where you sit, yet you want to know how to deal with life when you lose a loved one, or heartbreak, or things that really matter. But being told where to sit in a Buddhist place that infringes upon your personal space, I'll go back to the practice part of it, but that is the practice part of it. And so very often, we think that Buddhism is something we have to learn about. The Buddha taught very simply suffering and the path to ending suffering. And the path to ending suffering is the practice of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. That is it. That's all. You do not need to learn anything else about Buddhism. Now, some people will think, well, it has to be said in some foreign language. Or if I don't hear some Pali or Sanskrit words, then it's not really Buddhism. Or if I don't put some little number in front of it, like a Four Noble Truth or a Sixth Paramita or an Eightfold Path, that it's not Buddhism. It's a practice. And we practice this every single day. If you've been coming here for 3 months, I promise you, and this is, if you've been going to any Buddhist temple for 3 months, I promise you, you have learned everything you will ever need to learn about Buddhist practice. What part is missing?
Doing it.
Doing it. Right? Again, I ask, when was the last time you got a lesson on how to brush your teeth? For those who joined us late, that's what started this whole fun topic. You learned it when you were tiny. Somebody taught you, they reminded you, and eventually, you don't still tell her how to brush your teeth, right? You remind her to do it, probably, actually, right? But you're not showing her how to do it anymore, right? Maybe sometimes.
It's another story.
All right. I won't embarrass you anymore. But it's just a practice. So, as you go throughout your day today, don't worry about being Buddhist. Don't worry about studying some sutra. Don't worry about, are you Buddhist enough? Don't worry about if you're Buddhist at all. Just focus on, are you kind to the people you encounter today? Are you generous or are you greedy? Are you compassionate or are you angry? Are you practicing wisdom or are you filled with ignorance? Meaning you're stuck in your view and you think everyone else is wrong. Anyone ever get that way? Alright? It's always the front row people. So, yeah, I'll probably come back to the sitting part later because that's a whole thing to explore. That for me was one of the first lessons to cut through ego and pride and attachment. Our favorite stuff. You know? So we'll save that for another day. For those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. You also have chosen any seat you want in the comfort of wherever you are. So I suggest you get up and move quickly. We'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you are on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, if comfortable, just trying to sit up straight. And for those who are new, you're not trying to empty your mind, you're not trying to empty your thoughts, you're not trying to go blank. You're just going to sit and breathe. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep, or remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to the present moment. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever is comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, or still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands, cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. What we realize from this practice is this is our life every single day. Things happen, you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix it. It helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then begin to make changes. This practice is direct perception into the present moment. And very often that present moment is filled with chaos, conflict, difficulty, challenges. So it's not running away from whatever's going on in your life and thinking that meditation and Buddhism is going to fix you. There's nothing to be fixed. There's living with the experiences that you've had and understanding how you've created the situation in life that you're in, and not looking for Buddhism or meditation or anyone else or any place else to fix that. It's not how this works. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. It is the day-to-day practice, constant practice and awareness every day for the rest of your life of what you think and what you say and what you do. That right there is the heart of the Buddhist teachings. That's it. Awareness of what you think, of what you say, and what you do. That is your karma. Karma is not what you get. Karma is not what you deserve. Karma is not what they deserve. Karma is not what's coming to them. Karma is action. This is what you bring into the world. Karma is not what you get, it's what you give. It's what you give with your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So this practice is nothing more than being mindful and aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. Doesn't change. Doesn't get more advanced. It doesn't get more complicated. It just repeats itself every single day. If we are fortunate enough and blessed enough to wake up each day. Because some people didn't. Some people thought they were waking up today and didn't. But you did. So since you woke up today, you have an opportunity to practice. And as a practitioner, that is the greatest thing that I can do. This is what I always learned. The Buddha taught the greatest gift you can give is the Dharma, the teachings. Now, it doesn't mean to give the teaching as a lecture or a speech. It means to practice it and to give the Dharma to the people in your life. Meaning loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. All the key buzzwords that you hear phrased under Buddhist terms to make you sound or make you feel like you're learning about Buddhism. Just to satisfy your craving and desire to learn about Buddhism. But to me, Buddhism is just one big game to get everybody to be nice. And in this culture, we've come into that, for the most part, much later in life. So, it's reminders. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And to those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello as you are. If you have any questions, put them there. I'll do my best to respond. And we'll use the rest of our time this morning for questions.
Jeff, I haven't heard you talk about guilt, about an action that you had to take that was necessary regarding another person, and sometimes feeling a little guilt because that was maybe not the action that person wanted. How do you deal with that?
You're asking a Jewish guy to talk about guilt? I can handle that. Do we have time? We only got like 20 minutes left, so this would be a 6-month course. So the question around, for those who didn't hear it, the question was that you hadn't heard me talk about guilt, and I'm paraphrasing this just for those maybe who didn't hear it, but in essence, how do we respond? What do we do when we make choices or we do things or say things to somebody that it wasn't what they wanted to hear or what they wanted to have happen, and so then we might live with that guilt, and how do we come to terms or make peace with that, right? Is that a fair? Yeah. Quite simply, your intention without getting into specifics, right? Your intention when you did this action, right? With body, speech, or mind, thought, words, or actions. Was your intention coming from a place where life was all about you and you thought you were the most important, or was it coming from a place of loving kindness and compassion? And in your perception, wisdom. Is that where it was coming from?
Yeah. And necessity.
And necessity, even on top of that, right? Necessity. How they take it ain't your fault. Right? You've been listening to me for years. You think I care about what people here think about me? I basically call everybody here greedy, angry, and ignorant week after week after week. And y'all keep showing up. No guilt. Right? But in all, that was serious too, but in all seriousness, it really does come down to your intention. And to me, the wisdom around this practice is to understand that regardless of your choices, right? Your thoughts, your words, your actions, necessity, loving kindness, compassion, that's where it's coming from. How it's received, you have to practice non-attachment, not attaching to how they're going to take it. Because that's on them. Why are we so concerned about whether people like what he said or did? A lot of people spend their whole lives making sure people like everything they say and do. And then they end up here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock trying to come to peace with that. So, you've done what you've done. And so that's where, to me, the question around guilt, it's not, how can I say this? To me, you're creating space to where guilt doesn't even arise. There is no guilt to have to come to terms with. There is no guilt to have to come to terms with. You've just done what you've done. Why is there any guilt around that? Did you do something wrong? Did you, in your mind, in your intention, harm them? Were you mean or cruel to them? So what have you done wrong? Why do you have this sense of guilt over doing what your intention was a beautiful act? Their mess, not yours. Doesn't mean they're not going to be pissed off and angry and hate you. But don't twist that and turn that into, well, now I feel guilty because they don't like me. They don't like you, that's their mess to deal with. They can sit here on Tuesday and ask about you.
I'm just thinking, can't guilt kind of be conflated with compassion in some of those scenarios, or compassion or empathy for what they're experiencing? I was thinking two thoughts. One is that one, and then the other is that sometimes guilt for me is my ego and trying to manage their reactions, because I think that they should react a certain way, which I don't know the specifics of the situation, but
sure. Yeah, I think both of those, I think there's, not that you need my confirmation what you said, but I think there's truth for me from a practice standpoint in both of those things, that often that the guilt that we're feeling is tied to us wanting to control their response and their reaction. And I think having empathy, having compassion for their reaction and just saying, I feel you don't like me, or you don't like what I did. Sorry. So yeah, I think there's truth to both of those from a practice standpoint. What else? Questions? Yeah, I just see a hand.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
I think loneliness has become such a huge problem, especially for seniors. And I just wonder if a regular meditation practice might be helpful to help us then feel more connected, less isolated and alone.
Yeah, I don't think so. The question for those who didn't hear it was that. And I was with you until you dropped in, is meditation going to take away loneliness? The question for those who didn't hear was, loneliness has become a thing, especially maybe for seniors, and then you followed that up with, is meditation practice something that maybe will help with that loneliness? Meditation is about the loneliness, most isolated, lonely thing there is. But one thing I always loved that a dear friend of mine always said, you're always alone. Whether you open your eyes or close your eyes, whether there's somebody physically next to you or not, you are always with your own heart and your own mind. So this craving to not be alone, to me, is more about what's wrong with being alone. But we're in this, I shouldn't say just this culture, but we're in this culture where we feel like we have to be connected to somebody physically. We need to have someone in our lives. And I'm not discounting or downplaying loneliness, so I'll get to that in a minute. But I still just want to look at this from a practice standpoint that, for me, we should love being alone. Because when we're alone, we're with ourselves. And if we actually love ourselves, then we're with someone we love every moment. But very often we don't love ourselves, so we want someone to complete me. 1984, or whatever year that was. Tom Cruise ruined it for all of us 40 years later. That was Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So we spend our whole lives looking for someone to complete us. As if that's gonna like heal these wounds that we carry. Oh, I can't be alone. God, I love being alone, man. I just want to like shut up, stare at a wall, and be by myself. Because that's a beautiful place. That's great. You know? To me, the practice is learning to be okay with that. And then if people come in and out and filter in and out and sit with you or not, or hug you or not, or hold your hand or not, whatever. Great. Complement each other, not complete each other. We don't need completion. We're just perfect, beautiful, screwed up human beings exactly as we are. Learn to love that. But more specifically for loneliness, loneliness sucks, right? I remember those feelings in younger years of like just feeling so alone. But that was because I hated myself. So I wanted somebody else to be around me so I could focus on them. Because I didn't want to focus on myself. But I definitely don't think a meditation practice will help with loneliness from, working in this stuff long enough. I think meditation actually itself can potentially make you feel more lonely. Being around Sangha, as the Buddha taught, the triple gem, right, as we do in the beginning. We take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Sangha is community. So I think the best thing for loneliness, if that's something that is really heavy on anyone's heart, at any age, but as you say, especially for seniors, then find communities. It doesn't have to be here, but there are communities everywhere. Find hobbies, find groups of people to be around. If you're not ready to just cultivate falling in love with yourself yet, and you want to just be around people, then by all means, Meetup is a great website. It's how a lot of people ended up here. If you like hiking, go to Meetup. But I'm in San Diego and I like to hike. You'll find 50 other people that like to hike. Some of them might even show up to the hiking event. And the 4 that do, there you go. Now you got 4 other people to hike with. So loneliness, just get yourself around people to pull yourself out of loneliness. But don't go there looking for them to like fix you. Because then you're going to spend the rest of your life looking for someone to fix you. And that's a problem in its own way. But we don't have time for that either. We'll put that in the guilt class, yeah.
Speaking of that subject, I said this to you actually. The Dutch have initiated checkout spaces in grocery stores for the seniors to come through and have somebody to chat with.
Oh, nice.
And it's spread all over Holland.
Yeah.
And they've even introduced little areas for the seniors to sit and have coffee and chat. And I just thought that was the sweetest and compassionate thing, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. It reminds me of 2 things. I did meditation at senior centers for years, and one of them, through Jewish Family Services, the time slot I had was right before lunch. And man, that's the worst time to do meditation with seniors, because they were out the door before we were even done. But also reminded me of my mom, she drove for Meals on Wheels for probably 30 plus years. And that was one thing she always said, was that the greatest joy for her was actually showing up to the houses where for a lot of the seniors, the only person they saw all day was her. Or her friend who, they did it together. So yeah, loneliness is, I didn't mean to downplay the question. I think it's very valid, but I just wanted to address it from that standpoint. But then also, yes, loneliness, for those of you who are lonely, go places. Find grocery stores where people will talk to you. Yeah.
Can you speak to the difference between remorse and guilt? For example, as part of my practice for a lot of years, on retreat we would do this remorse and reconciliation practice. And I would get back in touch with something that I did 30 years ago that I still feel remorse for. I've forgiven myself for it. I don't beat myself up for it anymore. But do you think there is a difference, or is that just an opportunity to bring up some guilt and feel bad for what I did?
I think it depends, the question around any difference between remorse and guilt, and remorse being a big part of your practice for many years. I think it's semantics, and again, without getting too psychological around this, for me the teaching was always around doing things that we hadn't done. And I think you said the key word of forgiveness, that when we feel remorse for things we've done, and we learn to practice forgiveness for ourselves, I think that forgiveness practice can help with the guilt. It doesn't mean what we did was right or proper or good, and it doesn't take away the pain that we caused, right? And so I was always taught that when we do things that we shouldn't do, 3 steps. 1, recognize, or first is to apologize for what we've done. If it's something from 30 years ago, right? I could look back at my life, I would spend the rest of my life literally creating lists of things that I would have remorse towards and want to ask forgiveness for, right? But I'd be dead before I finished that list. So at some point in time, I have to find freedom, liberation from guilt that I may have carried with that. And first would be to apologize. If it's something from 30 years ago, they probably don't want to hear from you now. They're probably over it, have moved on. So apologize to someone, maybe present day, about what you did. Second is to recognize that what you did wasn't in line with the practice, these teachings that you're working on. And the third is to vow to not do it again. And I think all of this really does help with this carrying on of guilt that people have their whole lives, because it doesn't do anyone any good. Very often for things from so long ago, not always, but very often the people or situations that we harmed, they have moved on. They've had to deal with it, it impacted them, but us carrying this guilt year after year after year doesn't do you any good. And so I think, but remorse, to begin semantics, to me remorse means, even though I've forgiven myself for things I've done, that doesn't make it okay. I still shouldn't have done it. So I still feel remorse for people I've harmed in the past. Just because I've forgiven myself doesn't mean I'm cool, I'm free from that. No, I still caused that harm, and they still had to experience that. And that was still really terrible to do. But I'm not going to punish. Guilt, to me, is just punishing yourself. So, yeah, I think there's a difference. What else? And this, I think, just to close that thought, I think it has a lot to do with having compassion towards yourself. The Buddhist teachings on compassion, the practice is to apply this to yourself as well. And the practice is to have compassion for yourself for things you've done in the past that harmed people. Because when we harm people, very often it's because we are hurting. We have been harmed, which doesn't excuse it or justify it, but we have been harmed, we are hurting, and therefore we just continue that cycle of pain and hurt. And so then other people are stuck, kind of bearing the brunt of our actions, which was coming from pain. And now they're in pain. What else?
I have one. So with meditating, it doesn't necessarily help with loneliness, but what about anger? I've been experiencing that a little bit. It crops up, but do you think meditation will help ease the feelings of being angry, letting things go easier?
Yeah, so much of this practice is a complete contradiction. So meditation absolutely can help with loneliness. It also could make it worse. So I just want to start there and then address the anger part. The reason it can make it worse is if we're just lonely and all we want is to be around somebody, and then we sit in meditation, who are we stuck with? Ourselves. And we're like, oh shit, I'm still alone. This sucks. Right? So I just want to point out that meditation might make loneliness worse. It also might make loneliness better, because we can learn to actually love and care the person that we're sitting with. Anger is the same thing. I'll talk more specifically about it, but if we carry anger could make ourselves more angry, right? There's a kind of common expression you'll hear in these circles where they say, An angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator, right? Meditation in and of itself doesn't take away the anger, but it allows us to sit with it and do a couple things. So if you're experiencing tremendous anger in that moment, and you ever been really angry and done things that are wise and beneficial? No, it doesn't usually work that way. So when we experience and feel anger, which for me, that's what led me to this practice. I mean, just years and years and years of just massive amounts of anger and misery and depression and rage and hatred and all that kind of stuff. It's how I ended up here, right? So when you're angry, we don't typically make wise decisions. So first, when you're angry, learn to sit with that. It doesn't mean the anger is going to go away. You might actually feel it more because you're not doing anything to distract yourself. But when you sit and do nothing with your anger, you know what you're not doing? Anything dumb. You're not harming anyone else. You're not yelling at anyone else. You're not punching anyone else. You're just sitting with your own anger. And you're learning to be with your own anger. So you're learning to become friends. Oh, hi, there's my anger. This really sucks. This makes my heart race or my fists clench or whatever, is going on with you in that moment. You begin to experience what that's like. And then you keep in mind the Buddhist teachings of impermanence, which tells us all conditioned phenomena will come together for a period of time and cease to exist. All emotions, including anger. Now, it might not go away quickly. It might take a few years, right? But to understand that anger will change. You've been really angry in the past? Has that gone away? Ever?
No.
Your anger has never changed.
I mean, there's been times where I was able to, I feel like when I was working on myself, I was able to let things go easier, but lately I noticed it pops up a little easier.
Yeah, what I mean is anger arises, but are you angry every moment?
No.
That's what I was getting at, is that it arises, it's still there, but then it passes. So it comes into your life, and maybe it's coming into your life more often right now, which is why you're here, right? It's why we're all here for some reason. But it comes together and then it passes. So just know that anger is not permanent. It's not going to stay forever. Knowing that alone can maybe help inspire and motivate you to keep practicing compassion and doing kind things for yourself and others. That's the first step. The second thing is to understand that, as the Buddha taught, the root cause of our suffering is craving and desire. And that always starts with us craving and desiring everything in the world to go exactly how we want it to go. And when it doesn't, we get what? Angry. So again, similar kind of response to the guilt question. It's one thing to say, how do I deal with this guilt? It's another thing to say, how do I deal with this anger, but keep it from arising? And the way we keep anger from arising is recognizing that, and what's your name?
Kendra.
Kendra, life ain't going to go how you want it to. Never has and never will. Do you know how liberating that view can be? If you stop expecting anything to go any way whatsoever, you don't get angry. In fact, if you just go into situations knowing this is going to be a complete shit show, then you can just laugh through it all. And you're like, what a mess this is. Bring on the holidays. What's there to be angry at? It's going exactly how it's going to go. So anger ultimately is coming from us trying to control situations, control people, control environments. Do you like to try to control things? Sometimes. Well, in those few moments that you like to try to control things, recognize if you try to abandon this ability to control, your anger will cease to exist. This is not easy at all. because we have ideas and expectations and a box we built our whole life about how we think everyone should be, how everyone should act, and how everyone should behave. And they're not going to do it that way. They're not going to say what you want. They're not going to tell you what you want to hear. This is truth. This is reality. Buddhist practice isn't like a hug. That's why they make bubble baths and things like that. This practice is waking up to the truth that life is going to hurt. But it doesn't have to. If you stop wanting it to go exactly how you think it should go. Which is quite funny because for all the people in this room, all of you want life to go differently. So who's right? No. So learn to not expect as much and you'll be less angry. It takes time. But it's possible. Yeah. Anything else before we close? We'll do one more question. If you want. Yeah.
It's probably not like a deep answer to this or anything, but you were in with yesterday.
I am.
Tell me.
You always focus on the important things, Sean. That's what I love about you. You know? Can't fool you.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else? Although I think we should just end on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different people leading different Buddhist practices, coming from a different lineage or different tradition. Every Thursday, 4:30, we do, I still think, one of the best things around here. It's a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly. We put it on bread, and we feed people who sleep on the streets. So anytime you think your life sucks and you lack gratitude, feed people who put their head on the sidewalk every night to go to sleep, and it tends to put things into perspective. And if it doesn't work, keep going back until it does. So that's every Thursday, 4:30. Just show up. You know, it's really important that I think as a practitioner, you learn, you try to understand that the sooner you take this stuff out of an intellectual thing and into an experiential thing, you'll begin to see changes in your life. Your life will change not because you've learned more about Buddhism. Your life will change because you've experienced different things, and to me that's the heart of this practice. So begin to practice that, and your life will in all likelihood change, and hopefully even for the better. Other than that, we don't have a cleaning crew. We are it. So if anybody wants to stick around and clean, there's a list inside the door of the bathrooms or anywhere outside. I don't know if Joe wants, if you're sticking around, if you want to put anybody, just know you're good. But if anybody wants to pick up any leaves or anything in the garden, Buddha for you is downstairs if you need anything. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything out of the day of silence, first Saturday of every month. So if 20 minutes of silence isn't enough torture for you, you get to do it for 4 hours. So feel free to show up to that. That's, again, the first Saturday of every month from 8 to noon. So thank you all. Wish you well. Talk to you soon.